welcome to week 4, creating value with relationship strategy. And this is where you start to really get into the heart of how you're going to develop your strategy, and we'll go into more detail. So we're going to talk about explaining how partnering relationships add value. We'll discuss how thought processes can enhance your relationship strategy. We'll identify and describe the major nonverbal factors that shape our sales image, and you've heard me talk about that in prior chapters. We'll describe the conversational strategies that help us establish relationships, and then we'll also use this chapter to explain how to establish a self-improvement plan based on personal development strategies. So looking at the relationship values, and as you read through, please make sure that if you have case studies that you're going out and reading them, because a lot of things in sales are about watching and listening to people. So for example, and I won't cover everything, I'll just hit the high points. But in here, we talk about the CRM database. That's the Customer Relationship Management Database. That is either HubSpot, that is Salesforce.com, that is Act, that is Goldmine. There's so many different, Soho is another one. There's so many CRMs out there. And what those are large databases where you as the salespeople, as you start to collect data on people, you can put it in there. And it's a way for you to be able to remember, like whose birthday is on what day. Do they have children that you can discuss? Are they a football player, not football player? Do they play soccer? Are they their mother not feeling well? And again, this is collecting data, and it sounds in some ways really bad, but you do that in your head anyway if you're a really good salespeople. Because think about it as a friend. When you're with a friend, you're collecting that same data anyway, so that you can empathize with them, that you can ask how they're doing. And so as a salesperson, you have to remind yourself that you are calling on hundreds of people sometimes in a month, and it's hard to keep track of everybody. So a CRM database helps you, number one, track all of that data so that you don't forget, but then also uses it for reminder timers so that it helps remind you, hey, I've got to send an email out to this person today. Or sometimes they have triggers that if you click on I met with this person, it will automatically send out a thank you email. So it will use technology to make your follow-ups easier. So you'll want to read more about CRM databases because they are now very integral to the sales process within a company, as I've mentioned previously. But usually the salesperson has 4 key groups of people that they have to engage with. Obviously, we know they're engaging with their customer or prospective customers. But there's also secondary decision makers within your company that you might, and even within other companies. So there's always somebody who's a secondary decision maker or an influencer who's helping that decision maker make a decision. And then you have the customer support staff in your own company. You may have, people that are helping you, like let's say putting your PowerPoint presentations together, or they might be helping you, put your proposals together. There's all of these people that you engage with that help you in the process of being able to do what your job is in sales. And then there's also the management level. And, I've had a really good experience with management, but I also have had issues where, let's say I've got a customer and I've really sold them. I'm thinking of Bosch, the stereo making company. It was $75 million. I had them almost sold. They liked me. They liked Keely services. They liked everything about what I said, but they had asked me for a pricing concession and said, we've got this other company. They're coming in with a lower rate than yours. Can you go low? And I had to go and ask an executive vice president. And he asked me if he could call the customer, which I obviously said yes. But he came back and said, I'm sorry, I can't go that low, which means I lost out on the sale, even though I did everything right. So there's a lot of selling within your own company that you have to do to make sure that the service or the product that you're making meets what the customer wants, and or that you're able to negotiate if somebody in your company doesn't want to sell to that customer, that you're negotiating equally as hard in your company as you are with the customer. So you make sure that you read that chapter and understand it very well. It talks about the relationship strategies, thought processes, and this is where thought processes become very interesting as you're thinking through how to do sales. So there's the win-win philosophy they talk about, which is in many cases overused, but it is a philosophy. But there's also empathy and ego. So empathy is when you really feel compassion for somebody, like you truly feel it. It's not that you're just saying it and pandering to someone so that you can make a sale. But there's also ego. So like being the best salesperson at your company so that you can win all the awards. That's ego driven. You want to win the awards. You want to be the number one best salesperson. Well, that might cause you to want to make decisions either ethically, as we talked about last chapter, or just pushing for sales, maybe pushing yourself harder to make that. So there's a lot of different drivers that salespeople have. But the most important is how that translates into your verbal and your nonverbal communication. And when I say nonverbal to me is one of the most important tactics that you should watch in just your everyday life, because it'll tell you when someone's uncomfortable with you. You can watch their eye movement change. You can watch them take a step back. You can watch them cross their arms over their chest, which, if you think about it logically, the center mass is where all your vital organs are. And it's an unconscious thing that we do as humans, that when we are uncomfortable or we feel threatened, we will cross our arms. So I know, for example, when I'm talking and I'm selling somebody, if I've said something that's uncomfortable, I will watch them cross their arms, and then I can try to unpack that. Okay, so think about what did I say that may have caused it, and then circle back to the conversation just to see if I can answer any questions to try to make sure they're not uncomfortable anymore. So nonverbal communication for me speaks louder than verbal communication. So its actions speak louder than words. So you're going to want to read about that. But there's also, now that we become a global society, there's also, how you enter a room and how you carry yourself, instead of slouching forward versus standing up straight, making sure that you're presentable in your appearance, that you're wearing a suit or whatever is appropriate for selling in your area. Then there's shaking hands. Some countries you don't shake someone's hand. With COVID, for example, we're still dealing with people who have become germaphobes and don't want to shake your hand. So you kind of have to take someone's cue. And it's sometimes hard to do. Sometimes you might have to take that first leap and find out, put your hand out and have them say, well, I'm sorry, because of COVID, I'm not shaking hands. So then now you just don't do it again. There's also facial expressions. I have to work very hard because I'm somebody who's very ethical. So when someone says something to me that I don't like, it would normally show on my face. So that's where you heard the term poker face. If you've seen a game of poker on TV, they wear glasses and they keep their face completely neutral so that somebody can't read their excitement, their being upset, their anxiousness. They wear glasses so that you can't see their eyes. You can't see somebody who's blinking rapidly or looking side to side rapidly or looking up, looking down, closing their eyes like, oh my God, I got the worst hand on the planet. So all of these things in your facial and your body language actually communicate to people, and that's that nonverbal behavior. Also influenced by eye contact. One of the biggest complaints I hear from companies now, and again, I just came from the workforce management industry, so all of these companies wanting to hire workers, is that this younger generation, and even some of the older generation are struggling with this, is that nobody make eye contact because you're so busy looking at your phone. Well, people as human beings build relationships through eye contact. And think about when you look at somebody, they always say, your eyes are the windows to your soul. Well, they are. And so if you're not making eye contact with somebody, you're going to work harder to build a relationship because they don't see you, literally don't see you. So maintaining good eye contact, but not too much eye contact because then it becomes creepy. So there's a delicate balance that you have to find when you're looking at how much to make eye contact with somebody. And then there are things like simplicity, your clothes, color, not doing, color blocking versus wearing, prints or things that are very distracting. Appropriateness, now we're in this world where, now people have different gender preferences or, pronouns that they prefer or a lot of different things like that. And you have to be mindful of that when you're out meeting new people because you don't know yet. So that area of get to know you is this very delicate balance. And so you're asking a lot of questions, and you're remembering a lot of details about that person so that you can, always be appropriate with them. And also in our society, there are certain etiquette codes that many people have forgotten. And it is really important, especially in sales, to go refresh yourself on professional etiquette. And I am teaching a class called Managing Your Professional Image, if anybody's interested in taking that class. And also there's another professor that teaches it, obviously. But it's all about how do you manage your professional image. And then quality, making sure that your wardrobe reflects an image. Now, this is where I get a little passionate because I ran a high-end vintage resale shop. But I always told my students, if you go into a job interview, they're not going to walk up behind you and flip the back of your jacket over to see what label you're wearing. So as long as you're dressed impeccably, that it's, what you're wearing is clean, it's pressed, it's of the style of the fashion, or even if it's not, how you present yourself and the confidence that you feel in it, all of those things make a visual impression on the people that you meet. So again, as a salesperson, that's why you hear a lot of companies have very strict dress codes, especially for their salespeople, because companies have the right to create their own branded image. And when you, as the representative, are out in the marketplace, you are representing those companies. That's why they have, like, for example, Keely Services, extremely conservative. So it's suits and pants or skirts and certain types of heels and no logos on shirts and things like that. So you also have to figure that out. Do you want to work for companies like that? And if you do, you have to abide by that, because that's the image that they're projecting about the company as well as about you. And then there's that visual integrity, making sure that you have, that you project those, those factors. So for example, lack of attention. There's nothing that is a bigger sales killer than if you're checking your phone in the middle of a meeting with somebody. So turn off your phone and turn it over. I turn mine over because I take it with me knowing that I may need my calendar to schedule something, but I don't want to be distracted by it. If, let's say, a notification comes in or the screen lights up, I turn it over. When I am with a potential customer or customer, they are my 100% priority. I give them 100% of my attention. And I actually have had people compliment me on it, because we have lost that ability in our society to be able to focus and give someone that kind of attention. So when they get it, it's refreshing, because what you're saying to somebody is, you're the most important thing in my world right now, and I'm going to give you 100% of my attention. That there's nothing on a phone call or an email or a text that is more important than you. And in sales, that customer wants to feel like that they're important to you. Why? On top of just because it's a human nature thing that people want to relate to you, they have between 5 and 100 other salespeople calling on them in some cases. So you are competing against other people that you've never met. So that's why it's important to give your all and to really make sure that you understand your etiquette when it comes to how you present yourself to the world. When you're representing a company and or representing yourself. So make sure that you read this chapter very carefully. It's also going to be beneficial when you're out trying to sell yourself to employers. I always give the example to my students. If you are going in the banking and finance industry, for example, an extremely conservative industry, you want to wear navy blue suits, very little jewelry, very little showy. They're just very conservative. If you go into the ad agency area, more creative, if you were to wear that same outfit, they won't hire you, because they are looking for people who are creative. Big earrings, mix and match types, suit jackets and pants. They're not interested in people who are wearing jeans on an interview. And while they may have a policy to wear jeans in their company, do not show up at an interview in jeans. That's what you reserve once you get the job. You're trying to impress them at the beginning of the interview process, even though that may not be what you normally wear. You are selling yourself as this image to hire, and then the privilege of, once you get in there, then you accommodate to their schedule of how they choose to dress and how their, the school, the company, what their policies are, and what your peers and how they dress. But when you're wanting to become a part of that, there's a certain etiquette that's expected, which is very formal through the interview process. I've seen many people blow an interview because of being dressed too casually. So look at this chapter, not just for you as a salesperson, but also for you as somebody who's out selling your services to future employers.